In the lush, emerald heart of Kenya, where the towering Aberdare Range meets the verdant slopes of Mount Kenya, the echoes of a great struggle reverberate through the ages. This is the land of the Kikuyu, Embu, and Meru people, and it is here that the legend of Dedan Kimathi, the lion of the forest, was born. His story, woven with threads of African culture, tradition, and folklore, is a tale of bravery, sacrifice, and the unyielding quest for freedom. Long before the advent of colonial rule, the Kikuyu people lived in harmony with the land. They revered the sacred mountain, Kirinyaga, where their god, Nyai, dwelled. It was from this mountain that the ancestors descended, led by Gikuyu and his wife, Mumbi. The Kikuyu's connection to the land was profound. They believed that every tree, river, and hill held the spirits of their forebears. Among the Kikuyu, the stories of the past were passed down through generations around the fires at night. Elders recounted tales of heroic deeds, of battles fought and won, and of the eternal bond between the people and their land. This oral tradition was the lifeblood of the Kikuyu culture, preserving their history and identity. Dedan Kimathi was born in 1920 in the Nyeri district, a land of rolling hills and fertile valleys. His childhood was steeped in the traditions of his people. He listened intently to the elders' stories and learned the ways of the Kikuyu. From a young age, he exhibited a sharp intellect and a rebellious spirit. Kimathi's father, Njoroge wa Kimathi, was a respected elder in their village, known for his wisdom and deep connection to Kikuyu traditions. He often spoke of the land grievances and injustices that the Kikuyu endured under British rule. Their ancestral lands had been taken, and the people were relegated to labor on the very soil that once belonged to them. These stories of dispossession and hardship kindled a fire in young Kimathi's heart, a fire that would grow into a fierce determination to fight for his people's rights. As a teenager, Kimathi attended the local mission school, where he excelled academically. However, his rebellious nature often brought him into conflict with the colonial authorities. He questioned the injustices he saw and was punished for his defiance. But these punishments only served to strengthen his resolve. Kimathi's education exposed him to new ideas about freedom and justice. He read widely, absorbing the works of African nationalists and thinkers. He was particularly inspired by the stories of resistance from other parts of Africa and beyond. The struggles of people against colonial rule resonated deeply with him, fueling his desire to see his own people free. By the early 1950s, the discontent among the Kenyan people had reached a boiling point. The fertile lands were in the hands of the British settlers, and the indigenous people were pushed to the margins. The Kikuyu, in particular, bore the brunt of this oppression. In response, a clandestine resistance movement began to form, known as the Mau Mau. The Mau Mau was more than a military movement. It was a cultural and spiritual revival. Its members took oaths, swearing loyalty to the cause of liberation. These oaths were sacred, invoking the spirits of the ancestors and binding the members in a brotherhood of resistance. The rituals were conducted in secret under the cover of night, deep within the forests. Kimathi joined the Mau Mau and quickly rose through its ranks. His leadership skills and fierce determination set him apart. He took the Mau Mau oath, pledging his life to the struggle for freedom. The oath ceremony was intense, involving rituals that connected the participants to their ancestors and to the land they sought to reclaim. The oathing ceremonies were steeped in Kikuyu tradition and spirituality. Participants would gather in secret locations, often in the dense forests or remote valleys. There, under the cover of darkness and the watchful eyes of the elders, they would swear their allegiance to the cause of liberation. They would place their hands on sacred objects, such as the mugumo tree, believed to be the dwelling place of the spirits, and recite the oaths that bound them to the Mau Mau. The ceremonies were accompanied by the chanting of ancient songs, invoking the strength and guidance of the ancestors. As a leader, Kimathi was instrumental in organizing guerrilla warfare against the colonial forces. He established a command structure within the Mau Mau, creating the Kenya Defense Council to oversee military operations. His strategic mind and ability to inspire his followers made him a formidable opponent to the British. The Mau Mau fighters used the dense forests of the Aberdare Range and Mount Kenya as their base. These forests, with their towering trees and thick undergrowth, provided the perfect cover for guerrilla warfare. The fighters knew the terrain intimately, using it to their advantage in their hit-and-run tactics. Kimathi's life in the forest was one of constant danger and hardship. The Mau Mau camps were hidden deep within the forest, where they were safe from the prying eyes of the colonial forces. Supplies were scarce, and the fighters often went without food for days. But their spirit remained unbroken, fueled by the righteousness of their cause. Kimathi's leadership style was both charismatic and pragmatic. He understood the importance of maintaining the morale of his fighters, often sharing stories of past battles and victories to inspire them. He also emphasized the importance of discipline and unity, knowing that their survival depended on their ability to work together and support each other. The forest itself became a symbol of the Mau Mau's resistance. The towering mugumo trees, with their gnarled branches and thick foliage, provided shelter and camouflage. The sounds of the forest, the rustling of leaves, the calls of birds, the distant roar of waterfalls, became a comforting backdrop to the fighters, reminding them of the land they were fighting to reclaim. One of the most pivotal moments in the struggle came when Kimathi orchestrated a daring raid on a settler farm. The farm was heavily guarded, but the Mau Mau fighters, using their intimate knowledge of the terrain, managed to infiltrate it. Under the cover of darkness, they struck, liberating supplies and striking fear into the hearts of the settlers. The raid was a success, but it came at a cost. The British forces intensified their efforts to crush the Mau Mau. Villages were burned, families were torn apart, and suspected Mau Mau supporters were detained in concentration camps. The colonial government employed brutal tactics, hoping to break the spirit of the resistance. Despite these hardships, Kimathi and his fighters continued their struggle. They held on to their belief in the justice of their cause, drawing strength from the stories of their ancestors and the spiritual connection to the land. The forest, with its ancient trees and hidden streams, became a sanctuary and a symbol of their fight for freedom. One of the most harrowing experiences for the Mau Mau fighters was the constant threat of betrayal. The British forces offered rewards for information, leading to the capture of Mau Mau leaders, and some people, driven by fear or greed, betrayed their own. Kimathi knew that the struggle was not only against the colonial forces, but also against the betrayal within their ranks. On October 21, 1956, Kimathi's luck ran out. Betrayed by informants, he was ambushed by a patrol of the Kenya Regiment in the Nyeri forest. A fierce gunfight ensued, and Kimathi, though gravely wounded, was captured. The British soldiers, recognizing the significance of their prisoner, treated him with a mix of fear and respect. Kimathi was taken to Nairobi, where he stood trial in a colonial court. Despite his injuries, he remained defiant, his spirit unbroken. His trial was a farce, a display of colonial power meant to demoralize the Mau Mau. But instead, it had the opposite effect. Kimathi's courage and unwavering commitment to his people inspired many, turning him into a symbol of resistance. The trial was held in a heavily guarded courtroom, with Kimathi chained and surrounded by armed soldiers. The colonial authorities sought to portray him as a dangerous criminal, but his dignified demeanor and powerful testimony revealed him as a freedom fighter. He spoke eloquently about the injustices faced by his people and the righteousness of their cause, capturing the hearts and minds of those who heard him. In November 1956, Dedan Kimathi was sentenced to death. He was hanged on February 18, 1957, at the Committee Maximum Security Prison. His execution was meant to be a final blow to the Mau Mau movement, but instead it solidified his status as a martyr for Kenyan independence. The news of Kimathi's death spread quickly, sparking outrage and sorrow among the Kenyan people. His legacy, however, lived on. The Mau Mau fighters continued their struggle, and the brutality of the colonial response drew international condemnation. The world began to take notice of the injustices in Kenya, and pressure mounted for change. Kimathi's execution was a somber event, marked by a sense of loss, but also a renewed determination to carry on the fight. His last words, spoken with unwavering conviction, were a call to his people to continue the struggle for freedom. His body was buried in an unmarked grave, but his spirit lived on in the hearts of his followers. In 1963, Kenya finally gained its independence. The dream that Kimathi and the Mau Mau fighters had fought and died for was realized. The new nation honored its heroes, and Dedan Kimathi's name became synonymous with the fight for justice and freedom. Today, Dedan Kimathi is remembered as a national hero. Statues and monuments in his honor stand in Nairobi and other parts of Kenya. His legacy is taught in schools, and his story is a testament to the resilience and courage of the Kenyan people. The Mau Mau movement, once shrouded in secrecy, is now celebrated as a pivotal chapter in Kenya's history. The new Kenyan government faced the challenge of healing a nation scarred by years of conflict. The stories of the Mau Mau fighters were brought into the light, their sacrifices acknowledged and honored. Efforts were made to restore the land to its rightful owners, and the injustices of the colonial era were addressed. The story of Dedan Kimathi and the Mau Mau is more than a tale of war. It is a story of cultural revival and spiritual awakening. It is a reminder of the deep connection between the Kenyan people and their land, and of the enduring power of resistance against oppression. In the forests of the Aberdare Range and Mount Kenya, where the spirits of the ancestors still linger, the legacy of Dedan Kimathi lives on. His courage and sacrifice continue to inspire future generations, a beacon of hope and a reminder that the fight for justice is never in vain. As the sun sets over the rolling hills of Nyeri, casting a golden glow over the land, the stories of the past come alive once more. Around the fires at night, the elders recount the tales of Dedan Kimathi, the lion of the forest, ensuring that his legacy endures and that the spirit of resistance and freedom remains a guiding light for all who seek justice.